Okay guys, this is my first attempt at a YouTube video after a request from a customer on how to strip a 500 scale model to customize for yourself. Now I've been doing this a while. I'm sure if some of you followed my page, Custom Aviation Modeling, you'd have seen some of my infatuation with the Iran Air fleet. Well, this is going to be also part of the Iran Air fleet. Now, although Iran Air never flew an A340, I have found an image of what I just come across one day flicking through, as you do, and I saw this and I thought, why not? Now I can customize and make my own. Why not make one? So here it is. I'm going to talk you through the stripping down of one side. Once you've done one side, you can pretty much do the other. 9 times out of 10 they're identical. Now what a lot of people tend to misunderstand is it's not just one stripping agent that we tend to use to strip these models down. The paint on the rear tail, for example, is sometimes on a plastic fin, and this plastic is is quite temperamental. It can burn and melt somewhat under certain solvents. That's why you can see variation of solvents in the background there. Same with the usual registration number on the underside of one of the wings. This usually, using the same solvent that you would use, for example, on the body, would erode and melt the paint on the wing. Same with the engines, a different solvent for the engines. So I'm going to talk you quickly through one side and how I start and where I start, what I use. I have a variation of different sort of cotton buds with different types of ends for getting into different areas and different parts of the fuselage and the wings and whatnot. So to start with, I'll work out what sort of solvents I'm going to need. So for the tail, for example, like in this case, I haven't stripped down the parts from the plane. In some circumstances, I stripped down the parts to be sort of individual parts of the engines will be separated. The wings will be off, the stabs will be off, as will the tail. You know, I'll strip it all down to be able to do it individually. But with this one, I figured I can probably do this freehand with it being all still intact without damaging anywhere that needn't be damaged. So we'll start with the registration on the underside of the wing. Now, like I said, this one has to be a solvent that's not quite as I don't know, acidic, is that the right word? It doesn't melt the paint anyway underneath the registration, but it does take some time to sort of start wearing down. It does make you work for it, these little bits underneath the wings. So I'll just dab a Q-tip into the solvent. This is just like a thinners based enamel based thinners, pick up from most model shops, and then just over the registration we're just going to lightly glaze over it. I don't know if you guys can see that up close. You see the Q-tip is just starting to get a little blue tint to it. It's just starting to come off. It's just a case of repetitiveness and perseverance, unfortunately. These things are set to trials, but all of a sudden you'll see it'll just start to break up. You just apply very little pressure to it. You can see the end of the Q-tip is starting to get a bit more blue as the colour starts to fade on the registration itself. Now, rather than dipping this back in, Q-tips are very cheap. Just go with a different end. You don't want it drenched, so usually try and just squeeze out the excess over the edge, and just lightly, when you start with it, lightly glaze over it, and just gently again start applying little bit by little bit more pressure. You basically don't want the thinners to dribble off the wing. You want it to try and stay controlled on the Q-tip. You see now it's just starting to come away. I know other people might use other methods. I've tried other methods. I've tried the scraping, I've tried very precise sort of picking away at it, and there are other quicker ways I suppose, but not as precise, that leave you with pretty much an immaculate base to replace your new registration. See, it's just all of a sudden just seems to start to disappear. Try and find a clean edge. You can see within very slight shadow, you can see it glazed in the light there of the former registration, which if you continue to rub sometimes also disappears. Other times not so much, depends on the colour. In this case it was quite a dark colour, so it will leave a bit of a stain. Get some tissue, wipe that down, and you can see registration removed. Ready for moving on. We'll go to the tail, and just through experience and many failures, many melted rears, many stripped and stained tails, with this aircraft going to be primarily a white tail, I chose the Air France A340 because it was the most white-ish tail I could find at the time, and it was cheap enough on eBay. So we're going to strip the tail. And with this, it's got quite an area to cover, so I tend to go for a sort of a flatter thing. Same sort of solution, doesn't need to be a very strong solution. This is just this case of time consumption. You'll see the difference in solutions between the body and the plastic parts to the aircraft. I mean, there are other solutions in the background there, some not as solvent and some not as strong. For nail varnish remover, there's certain nail varnish removers that do work for this very thing, the plastics. But I'm still yet to find one that I'm satisfied doesn't damage the plastic. If any of you know of any out there, please feel free to let me know. We can get hold of in the UK. I know there's plenty over in Europe and plenty in America that people use for nail varnish remover. I think some places call it acetone. We tend to call it something different over here. Acetone's a total different solution. You can see with the tail, it's just starting to thin out the colours on the cotton there. My advice would be don't let the solvent sit too long without keeping it moving, because I've had experience before where I've kind of missed a spot and left it. As I've been concentrating down here, this spot has started to melt. So try and keep an even sort of flow of where you're erasing out. I haven't yet got the new decal for this yet, but when I do, I'll be sure to upload a little video of that as well, maybe applying the decal, show you guys how that's done. And you can see again the tail, it's just starting to thin out. And all of a sudden you just see it start to lift. I keep getting this angle of this camera wrong, I do apologise. You see it starting to slowly move away. Red might be a bit stubborn, tends to always be a bit stubborn, does red. Let's go for a Q-tip. guys, this might seem a bit slow and tedious, but it's the nature of the game, unfortunately. These things don't happen very quickly. You have to be patient and persevere. It's starting to break them. You can just see it there. Sound of the cotton bud rubbing on the plastic. When my wife sometimes sits in the workshop with me of an evening, it goes through like someone's scraping a chalkboard. Surefire way to get her out of the workshop. So stubborn. Let's get the end of this tail as well. Because I'm applying pressure right to the tip, I tend to try and find a nice position just to counterbalance the pressure so I don't run the risk of bending or snapping the tail. You can see, not much pressure like, just enough that if I wasn't to put it on, I run the risk of bending that. Let's go with a clean one. We're almost at the end of the tail now. What's that been, about 10 minutes, 50? About ages. You might have wanted to fast forward this bit, I do apologise. We're almost there. And I promise you the body doesn't actually take that long. We're just stripping it down as I'm going to show you. In fairness, I make it a bit harder for myself by leaving certain parts. I just can't be bothered putting the decal on for it, if I'm honest. last little bit of the tail. I'm just going to rub this off at the top. I get some little stubborn bits just in the lines of the. You pretty much see it's all gone there. It's going to annoy me that. Along the tail, here you have the definition of the rear fin. Sometimes you get just some very little stubborn bits. I find it just get a little pin, just gently, because it should have solvent in it that breaks the paint up quite easily. So, sorry the zoom isn't great on this, guys. You can see it just starts to even though I know the new decal will cover it, I'm still not happy that it's there. There you go, it's gone. Right, get rid of that little red bit back there as well. Okay, so we have a tail complete, one side anyway. So obviously repeat for the second side. Now, fuselage, this strips down very easily, quite messy, but easily. Now you have to be careful when doing the fuselage because the paint on the wings, you can see sits quite close to the windows. I mean, I don't think you'd be precise enough to be able to do it, but you know, you could just remove the air front if you really wanted to, but you'd end up missing the door, and again you'll see how extremely hard that is. So we're gonna so we've got just what we call air acetone. Just I bought it from a local Boots, it's like a medicine store. I tend to use the more precise tipped cotton buds for this, because you'll see now sometimes, like on certain cases, I know for the next job I'm going to need the front door, so I'll try and leave the front door. Sometimes it's not always possible, but I'll try and leave the front door, which means I've got to remove very carefully the Sky Team logo, I think it is, and the name of this aircraft, and it's just the Air France logo again. I'll try, let's see what happens. And sometimes the rear door as well, but I'm going to remove the rear door this time. But it's as simple as, with this acetone, you just need to give it a rub, go over the same spot a few times, but you see it'll just remove it literally the second it hits it. Now, as I said, the paint on the wings will strip if you touch it with said acetone, so I tend to take just a little bit of precision here. You see the ink smudges, if you push the ink down you end up getting closer and closer to that wing. So my advice is I tend to just try and drag it and twist it at the same time. So you're getting the motion, but it's also bringing it up. See? So we'll go with the flat end now. Without, if you make it too much, it'll dribble. So just try and gently. So it just literally just erases it and drags it off. As I said, I'm going to try and keep the front door, so I'll work back from the door. So I want to remove this logo here. Now you see the cardboard has got inky, messy, so it's starting to spread its ink. Again, you want to try and stay away from the door. Change this. Go for a precise tip. Again, not too wet, you don't want it dripping, just so it's got enough solvent to, let's see if we get a good line, just to, there we go. So I tend to sort of twist it in my fingers as I'm doing it, kind of helps you drag it the way you want it to go. And then once it's kind of off, just give it a once over, right down to the door, right down the side, just in case. You'll always see there's a little trace of the ink still left on the body. Still a little very slight trace there. There you have the body side removed. I'm going to keep the cockpit window on this as well. Again, sometimes you don't have to. If you've got the decal there forever, I've got the decal, I can order it to be, but like I say, to try and stick with whatever part of the original you can makes the next step a lot easier. I mean, sometimes it's inevitable, you end up damaging it, just as I think I might with this one. I've damaged the door, so I may as well just get rid of the door now. It's no big deal, it's just one less job, if you can see it, we still have to do it on the next part. Plus if you leave just the front door, it does look like a sort of cargo that's not been sprayed. Totally doing that off camera. And there is one stripped side. The engine generally, you want to quickly strip the engines down. It's the same process as the tail and as what was underneath the wing. In this case, with the Herpa sort of series, you can get away with. Yeah, you can get away with just enamel thinners and like I say, acetone or whatever it's called in said countries in the UK acetone. So yeah, we're just gonna douse it, kind of let it start to break it up very gently. We'll do this one as well, let this one start to set. One thing I do advise as well, which I've just realised I should have kind of pointed out, is you end up with solvent on your fingers. I mean, luckily I've not quite ended up with much on me this time, but I have been before holding a model like this after successfully stripping the body, and then took my fingers off and found big fingerprints underneath and on the top, which has melted in. So this is just a case of time again. Certain models don't require you to change your solvent, you can just do it all in one solvent. But these Herpa ones tend to be quite temperamental, the plastic parts, they do melt very quickly with the stronger solvents, the stronger strippers. You see now this is starting to just go white. Step I'm going to have these engine markings on. I might actually leave them on. Let's go to the second one. I've just realised I've got them on the inside as well. That is one stripped A340, ready for its new livery, its new host. So we have it before. And then after. I hope that was kind of helpful for you guys. Like I said, it's my first time giving this a go, so any feedback would be helpful. I know there's a few tweaks to be made with regards to camera angles and probably sound and lighting and whatnot, but we'll see how it goes from here. If I get enough likes, I might start doing some more and give you an insight into how we do what we do. Look forward to hearing from you guys.